Okay, we are going to learn how to write polynomials given its zeros. I've done this in class, but I'm going to do probably 2 or 3 examples that hopefully will help you out. So we started out with the actual zero itself, and what we did is we turned it into its linear factor. So what you guys, a lot of you said was, let me just take the opposite. Well, the reason is, when I take the opposite, I'm actually getting this equal to 0. So I'm getting x plus 5 equals to 0 here. And this is my factored form, but did I write it in standard form? Standard form is biggest exponent to smallest exponent. So what I need to do now is I need to multiply. So I'm going to take x times x, which gives me an x squared. I'm going to take x times 5, which gives me a 5x. My next is going to give me a negative 7x and a minus 35. And while I have multiplied all that out, I have not written it in standard form. Standard form says combine your like terms and put everything together. So this is my polynomial written in standard form. This polynomial has zeros, x equals 7 and x equals negative 5. Okay, let's do something a little harder. This polynomial has zeros negative 3 and 4i. Please write the polynomial in standard form. Well, what we learned the other day was 4i has a conjugate, and its conjugate happens to be minus 4i. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up x equals negative 3, I'm going to set up x equals 4i, and I'm going to set up x equals negative 4i, and I'm going to make each one of these zeros, turn them into a linear factor with x equals 0. And how do I do that? I do it by using the opposite operation. So here I'm going to add, and I get x plus 4i equals 0. Now what do? I'm going to write them in parentheses. I'm going to write them as their linear factors. They're linear factors because the degree on each one of these x's is a positive 1. So this is factored form, which is great, but what did I ask for? Standard form. So I told you in class, I want you to multiply out the complex numbers first. So we're going to multiply out the x minus 4i times x plus 4i first, for a very important reason. So when I do this multiplication, I get x squared, and then I get a positive 4i, and then I get a negative 4i, and then I get a minus 16i squared. And I'm going to let you know, here's a reminder, I squared equals negative 1. These guys combine like terms to go to 0. I end up with x squared plus 16. So that's why I have you multiply conjugate roots together first, because the i's drop out. Now I'm going to come through and I'm going to multiply by x plus 3. So when I distribute, I get x cubed, and then I get a 3x squared, and then I get a 16x, and then 16 times 3 is, I want to say 48, but I want to double check, plus 48. Here's my polynomial written in standard form. Okay? All right, I'm going to give you one more. This time, my zeros are going to be a 4 plus radical 5 and the number 3. So what I know is 4 plus radical 5 is an irrational number, and I need to, this 0 has to have a conjugate. So 4 plus rad 5 is the 0. Its conjugate is 4 minus rad 5. Whoops. And then I'm going to go through, and this is 4 minus rad 5, and then I've got a 0 of 3. So when I set x equal to these things. My linear factor is going to be x minus 4 minus radical 5. My linear factor here is going to be x minus 4 plus rad 5. And my linear factor here is going to be x minus 3. The first two numbers we're multiplying together are those guys. We're multiplying them together because they are conjugates, and what will happen is nice things will happen, and maybe that square root's going to drop out. So first things first, x times x gives me an x squared. And then I do x times a minus 4. And then I'm going to do x times rad 5. So that's x rad 5. Now I'm going to come through and multiply by this negative 4 term. So negative 4 times x becomes a minus 4x. I'm writing him underneath his like term, which is the x. Now I'm going to multiply negative 4 times negative 4. I get a positive 16. I'm writing him over here because I don't have any numbers left, or I don't have any numbers to align him with, so I create a new spot. And now I'm going to multiply negative 4 times radical 5. So that gives me minus 4 rad 5. Okay. Last, I'm going to take this negative square root of 5, and I'm going to multiply him by x, and I get negative x radical 5. Ha, nice. Then I'm going to multiply negative radical 5 by a negative 4, and that's going to give me a positive 4 radical 5, because a minus times a minus is a positive. And last but not least, the negative square roots of 5 times the square root of 5 is equal to negative square root of 25, but the square root of 25 is 5. So I put a minus 5 right there. Now I'm going to come through and I'm going to add everything up. I've got an x squared. I've got a minus 8x. Those guys go to 0. 16 minus 5 is the number 11. And those guys go to 0. So that's the quadratic that results from multiplying those rational or irrational roots together. Now I've got to come through, though, and I've got to take care of this x minus 3. So this x minus 3 has got to come over here, and now I need to go back and do some more multiplication. Okay? So first things first, x squared times x gives me an x cubed. That multiplication gives me a minus 3x squared. Now I'm going to come through and do a negative 8x times x, and I'm going to line that up here because that's a x squared term. And then I'm going to do negative 24x. Then I'm going to come through and do my last piece. So I get plus 11x, and lastly I get minus 33. When I put all this together, I get x cubed minus 11x squared. 24 and 11 is going to give me 24 and 10 is 14, and one more is going to give me 13. So this is minus 13x minus 33. And this is my polynomial written in standard form. I'm done. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good night.